Hi, I'm Dave Wurzel, and you're watching Bookshelf. And on Bookshelf, we take a look at a variety of books from a variety of categories. And these are books that have recently come out or coming out soon in the next month or two. And we put them into some categories, and we're going to make a variety of recommendations. And with me to help do that today is my co-host, Beth Stevens, who's in the Public Services Department at Palo Heights Library. Beth, thank you for being here this morning.
You're welcome.
And let's jump into our first category. I'm going to take the first two here, I think. And let's see what we've got. This book, to people who follow the Maisy Dobbs novels, is not anything new. This book, which I think came out in March, maybe in the spring, somewhere around there, A Sunlit Weapon by Jacqueline Windspire. I'm just going to mention that if you haven't ever read a Maisy Dobbs book, I'd encourage you. Those of you who are familiar with her already, she's a great read. She writes mysteries, historical mysteries. And in this case, I'm going to recommend you try the audio version. I have not read all the series. I back in the spring when this book came out, I read the first one to find out who Maisy Dobbs was. And then just recently, I read this one, which is obviously the most recent one in the series. And it's good. And now the Maisy Dobbs mystery is kind of it's moving forward in time. This is set in World War II, and it's good. And Eleanor Roosevelt makes an appearance in this one. They're fun mysteries, and I definitely recommend it. The reader for her books, I think maybe for all of them, I'm not sure, but I know for several of them is what's her name? Orlag Cassidy, who's an actress. She's a great reader, definitely adds to it. So if you've read them, you might want to try the audio too. If you've never read one, I'd still recommend the audio. These are fun books. So that's going to be my first kind of follow-up to one we did in the spring, but I'm going to do a shout out to the audio. The next book I want to take a look at is a nonfiction current affairs book. It just landed on my bookshelf. I have not read it yet. Somebody else has read it and said, oh, you've got to read this book. So it's in my you have to read category. Maria Yamadovich was the ambassador to Ukraine up until a few years ago. And it's her telling about her experience working in the State Department, working as an ambassador in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. And her experience is amazing. And the information in this book about, especially, there's a timeliness to it because of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And it sounds like, from what I've heard, a great book. I think Beth, the library has something coming up with this book, don't they?
Yeah, we do. It's our book discussion book in September.
Okay. So if you want to be part of that discussion, there's an option for you. In the very least, I based on the strong recommendation I got. So I'll be picking this book up very soon here. It sounds very fascinating. Anyway, all right, now let's jump into some books coming out in August. And Beth, I think you're going to take this one in the Guilty Pleasure Fun Reads. What have you got?
Got Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. She has been very popular lately. So if you haven't read one of hers, you definitely want to pick it up. And this is her newest one. And this is a powerful novel about the cost of greatness. And a legendary athlete attempts a comeback when the world considers her past her prime. Carrie Soto is fierce, and her determination to win at any cost has not made her popular. But by the time she retires from tennis, she's the best player the world has ever seen. At 37, Carrie makes a monumental decision to come out of retirement and be coached by her father for one last year. And she's good at family dramas and the intricacies of all of that.
No, that sounds good. After coming off the recommendation about the Yamadovich book. So a little balance here, okay? And again, best-selling author of Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones and the Six, very popular author. All right, next category is going to be my personal favorite. One of my personal favorite authors is William Kent Krueger. This is book 19 in the series of the Cork O'Connor mysteries. And if you're not familiar, they're set in northern Minnesota. Cork O'Connor is a sheriff, and they're good reads, and they're fun. There's an element of thriller suspense to it, and obviously always solving a mystery. And in this case, Cork O'Connor is in a race against time to save his wife, a mysterious stranger, and an Ojibwe healer from bloodthirsty mercenaries. And for me, it's William Kent Krueger. It's a Cork O'Connor mystery. I'm going to read it. If you've never tried one, You don't need to read them in order, probably like the Jacqueline Windspire series, but it probably helps to get to know the characters. I'm sure you could jump in with this, decide if you like it, then you may want to go back and revisit. All right, let's take a look at next category, and love to read it with a book club. Beth, I think you're going to recommend this one.
I am. It's Haven by Emma Donoghue. This is a beautiful story of adventure and survival from the best-selling author Room. Three men vow to leave the world behind them as they set out in a small boat for an island their leader has seen from a dream, with only faith to guide them. It's set in 7th century Ireland. A scholar and a priest called Art has a dream telling him to leave the sinful world behind. Taking 2 monks, young Trian and old Cormac, he rows down the River Shannon in search of an isolated spot on which to found a monastery. Drifting out into the Atlantic, the 3 men find an impossibly steep, barren island inhabited by tens of thousands of birds and claim it for God. In such a place, what will survival mean?
I love the premise to it. I love the historical quality to it, and the adventure survival element to it. It sounds like it. And again, another very popular author here, right?
She writes a lot of different things, I think.
All right, how about let's take a look. I have the next one, and this is Properties of Thirst by Marianne Wiggins, a book that, an author may be a little bit lesser known book or a title that may fly under the radar. And even though she's written quality work and she's been up for a Pulitzer Prize and, a finalist, for a National Book Award. But in this one, she comes to us with, what some reviewers are calling an American classic. It's a sweeping masterwork set during World War II about the meaning of family and the limitations of the American dream. Properties of Thirst is a novel that is both universal and intimate. It is a story of a changing American landscape and an examination of one of the darkest periods in this country's past, told through the stories of the individual loves and losses that weave together to form the fabric of our shared history. Ultimately, it is an unflinching distillation of our nation's essence and a celebration of bonds of love and family that persist against all odds. And again, for me, I like recommending books like this. I love the historical quality and the real people element to it. All right, next category, we've got science fiction, which from this author is kind of an interesting wrinkle. He's always bordered in this area, or some of his books do, even though I think we think of him as a horror author. But go ahead, Beth, what have you got here?
Yeah, this one intrigued me. I have actually never read a Stephen King novel.
Wow, never.
To say, but I might have to pick this one up. He actually was inspired by Narnia, which was one of my favorite books as a child. So this is Stephen King. He goes to the deepest well of his imagination in this spellbinding novel about a 17-year-old boy who inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher for that world or ours.
What I like about this is, to me, I think Stephen King, I'll share my bias now. I haven't read everything he's written, but I've read a lot of his work. He's written a wide variety of types of work. I think he's good. I think he's a phenomenal writer. Some of the horror stuff I'm not as into. I'm interested in this because it's not his usual genre, and I like the new spin here with him. So I'm looking forward to this one. All right, let's move to almost the other end of science fiction. Let's go to nonfiction, and something, Beth, you put in the travel adventure category. This one is Sinkable, Obsession, the Deep Sea and the Shipwreck of the Titanic by Daniel Stone. It's interesting about this book because you're like, how many more Titanic, story books, movies can we take a look at? This one, he does something kind of interesting, I think, and he looks at some of the stories that we've never heard around this thing. So I'm going to give you, a publisher account, spins a fascinating tale of history, science, and obsession, uncovering the untold story of the Titanic, not as a ship, but as a shipwreck. He explores generations of eccentrics like American Charles Smith, whose 1914 recovery plan using a synchronized armada of ships bearing electromagnets was complex, convincing, but utterly impossible. Or how about Jack Grimm, a Texas oil magnate who fruitlessly dropped a fortune to find the wreck after failing to find Noah's Ark. And the British Doug Woolley, a former pantyhose factory worker who has claimed since the 1960s to be the true owner of the Titanic wreckage. So you kind of get it. It's got some quirky qualities. There's humor in this, and curiosity exploring this. Witty in some ways. Somebody compared him to, it's in the tradition of Susan Orlean and Bill Bryson, and certainly for me as a fan of Bill Bryson, I'm interested in this. So this sounds like an interesting revisit of a very familiar topic. All right, next we've got Beth. This is you, nonfiction current affairs.
Yeah, this is an eyewitness account of the American collapse in Afghanistan. Elliot Ackerman left the American military 10 years ago, but his time in Afghanistan and Iraq with the Marines and later as a CIA paramilitary officer marked him indelibly. The Fifth Act is an astonishing human document that brings the weight of 20 years of war to bear on a single week, the week the war ended. Using the dramatic rescue efforts in Kabul as his lattice, Ackerman weaves a personal history of the war's long progression, beginning with the initial invasion in the months after 9/11. Any reader who wants to understand what went wrong with the war's trajectory will find a trenchant account here. But Fifth Act also brings the readers into close contact with a remarkable group of characters, American and Afghan, who fought the war with courage and dedication at great personal cost.
It sounds interesting because I like the firsthand element to this, the actual people who were there and what their experience was, and how it turned out based on what they saw and witnessed. Definitely interesting. Okay, those are our August, recommendations. So those will be coming out very soon here. And then we're going to take a sneak peek at a couple of September titles. So one, this is coming out in September of 2022, a book by Richard Osmond, The Bullet That Missed, a Thursday Murder Club mystery. Now, I think this is a third in the series. I haven't read any of these, but I know this sounds intriguing enough to me that makes me feel like, yes, I need to check them out. This is a, best-selling author. And for the Thursday Murder Club, I'm sorry, it's an ordinary Thursday and things should finally be returning to normal, except trouble's never far away where the Thursday Murder Club are concerned. A decade-old cold case at their favorite kind leads them to a local news legend and a murder with no body and no answers. From an upmarket spa to a prison cell complete with an espresso machine to a luxury penthouse high in the sky, this third adventure of the Thursday Murder Club is full of cleverness, intrigue, and irresistible charm that readers have come to expect from Richard Osmond's best-selling series. So for me, the description works. I'm intrigued. If you've never read one, maybe this is one to look out for. If you are familiar with the series, well then, here comes the next one for you to enjoy. All right, let's take a look at another one here, September release. We got two titles. Beth, I think you're going to take both of these. What have you got?
I've got The Winners, which is the long-awaited conclusion to the best-selling series, Beartown series, which inspired the HBO series of the same name. It follows a small hockey town's residents as they grapple with change, pain, hope, and redemption. It starts with a storm, a death, and two funerals on the same day. One person's life is being celebrated by all of Beartown. One person's life is being forgotten. Mary Anderson and Benny Ovich, two young people who left in search of a life far from the forest town, come home and joyfully reunite with their closest friends. This beautifully captures the complexities of daily life and explores questions of friendship, loyalty, loss, and identity. This emotion-packed novel asks us to reconsider what it means to win, what it means to lose, and what it means to forgive.
It sounds like a great book. I love books with great characters. If you care about the characters, if they're interesting, it makes the book a lot more fun to read. So this sounds like an intriguing book. I'm going to look forward to this one in September. And we've got one more by a huge, best-selling author here again in the favorite authors category. What have you got, Beth?
Yeah, she's one of my favorite authors. This is Shrines of Gaiety by Kate Atkinson. And she transports us to restless London in the wake of the Great War, a city fizzing with money, glamour, corruption, and the spellbinding tale of seduction and betrayal, 1926. And in a country still recovering from the Great War, London has become the focus for a delirious new nightlife. In the clubs of Soho, peers of the realm rub shoulders with starlets, foreign dignitaries with gangsters, and girls sell dances for a shilling at a time. With her new, unique Dickensian flair, Kate Atkins gives us a window into a vanished world. Slyly funny, brilliantly observant, and ingenuously plotted, Shrines of Gaiety shows us the myriad of talents that have made Atkinson one of the most lauded writers of our time.
It sounds like I have not read any of her books.
I love her. She's quirky.
She's quirky. I love the description, though. I love, the time period, the historical quality set in London, the clubs of Soho, gangster style, gangsters, dignitaries. Yeah, no, it sounds like a cool book. I'll have to take a look at this.
And she researches everything really well, so you feel like you are living there.
It feels real to you. And how about the Dickensian flair to it? Yeah, this might line jump for me. I have a list of books, but when this one comes out, I might move this to the top. All right, that sounds good. Beth, thank you. We've got a lot of great titles coming out in August and September, and things to look forward to. So thank you for your recommendations.
No problem.
I'm Dave Wurzel, and you've been watching Bookshelf, and thank you for watching, and good reading.